Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about a real estate transaction and break it down into the simplest steps. We're going to cover two types of transaction, a cash transaction and a financing transaction. And just bear in mind that this is just a basic breakdown. Obviously real estate transactions are a lot more complex, can get more complex, and sometimes they may be just as basic as this one. Okay, so the first step of a real estate transaction will be obviously the showing. And once you did your showing, then your buyer might make an offer if the showing went well. That offer may be rejected. If it's rejected, you do not have a deal. That offer may be countered. If it's countered, then your buyer can reject it, in which case you don't have a deal, or your buyer can accept it, or your offer may have gotten accepted from the beginning. The first type of transaction we're going to talk about is going to be the cash transaction. So once your offer gets accepted, and we're going to go that route, your buyer will need to make a deposit. The deposit is usually made either before submitting the offer, so the deposit would be held by the broker, or the deposit can be made after the offer has been accepted, usually within the first 3 days after the offer is accepted. So the deposit is made either with the broker or with the title company. The next step is going to be the inspection. So the inspection, usually in the standard as-is contract, the inspection is by default 15 days. In our market, it's on average about 10 days. Now, during the inspection period, your buyer has the opportunity to inspect the property. They should bring a licensed inspector. They should check the property for anything they don't like about it. They can even talk to the neighbors if they want. And if they choose for any reason that this property does not meet the requirements, this is their only opportunity to cancel this contract and walk away from the purchase. The next step in the transaction will be the title company. So the title company is the entity that actually pulls all the parties together. The seller, the buyer, the seller's broker, the buyer's broker. They are the ones who also handle all the funds in the transaction. They are the ones who collect the deposits, they are the ones who receive the funds to close, and they are also the ones that disburse the funds to the seller as well as the brokers. Now, the title company also ensures that the property does have an insurable and clear title, which is free of any liens or open permits. So if the title has any defects, and then it would not be insurable, two options are possible. Either the seller can correct them, or if they fail to correct them, the title is not insurable and you have no deal. If the seller does correct the title issues, then you get a clear title, at which point you would then go to the last step of the transaction, which is the walkthrough. If everything checks out during the walkthrough and the property is in acceptable condition, you are then good to go to the closing. Now, another possible step in a cash transaction is if the property is in a condo association or in an HOA association. And just about any condo association will require the buyer to submit an application. Some HOA applications may require that as well. So once the process is, once the offer gets accepted, your buyer will then need to submit the application. The application can either get denied. If it gets denied, you once again have no deal. If it gets approved, then that approval will have to go to the title company, as they do have to file it with the deed. So just to summarize, we went over the cash transaction, and now we're going to talk about the financing. Now, the financing has some things that are very similar to the cash transaction, just has a few more extra steps that you have to take care of. So when your buyer purchases a property and obtains financing, a loan for that purchase, first of all, there's two things they'll need to do. The first one is they'll also need to make a deposit, just like they needed to do so with the cash transaction. And then they also have to submit the loan application. Once the buyer submits the loan application, the lender will then order the appraisal. Now, once the appraisal is completed, there's a couple options that are possible. So first of all, if the property did not appraise, you might not have a deal. You might have to renegotiate the deal. If the property did get appraised, you're all good, and then your deal goes into underwriting. But if you do have to renegotiate, and you basically, once the buyer and the seller agree on the new term or the new price, then we'll consider that appraised, and then your file goes into underwriting. The underwriting step is basically when the lender reviews all the documents associated with the transaction. They will review the buyer's ability to purchase the property, they will review the buyer's income, they will also review the appraisal, make sure that the property is acceptable for the lender. Now, two things are possible here as well. If they can either deny the loan, in which case you would have no deal. If the underwriter approves your loan, and hopefully he does, then the next step is going to be the title company. And at this point, the rest is basically going to be the same as the cash transaction. So the title company will coordinate between the buyer, the seller, the listing broker, the buyer's broker, as well as the lender. They will ensure that the property has a clear title. Once they can ensure the title, you would then do a walkthrough, and finally a closing. So this video summarizes the two basic real estate transactions, cash and financing transaction. Now, obviously we didn't cover every step in detail, which we will definitely do in our upcoming videos. So stay tuned, and thank you for watching.
Succeed with Access USA Realty.